Hello and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Edge. I'm Chris Bishop. Now, great millionaires are not merely made by hard work and determination alone. Sometimes the catalyst may be something that happened merely by accident. Now, if you look at the birth of Polaroid instant cameras, if you can remember those, the man who invented those cameras was prompted to come up with the idea by the voice of an impatient child who wanted to know when he could see his photograph. Such an epiphany came the way of this week's guest, Charl de Toit. He couldn't find a suitable premises for his pest control business back in 1996, so he built his own. It led to a property management and development business that made him a fortune. Here is how he did it.
It all began in 1996 when Charl de Toit couldn't find a suitable premise for his franchise pest control business. The only option was to build his own. And to his surprise, he realized he could build more efficiently and cost effectively than the industry norm.
You know, the easy part is actually building the building, but a building on its own has no value. It's the finding of the right tenant and then building a long-term relationship with that tenant.
With over 120 tenants who vary from a one-man operation to companies that take up to 3,000 square meters of office space, the Success Academy has no plans of stopping here. At the moment, the company holds a portfolio of 50,000 square meters of office space in Highveld Technopark Centurion. This will increase to 75,000 square meters in the next 3 years, with the additional office park that is currently under construction.
I only focus here in Highveld Technopark. I also only focus on building office accommodation. So I don't do factories or houses. We just focus purely on providing A-grade office space.
But Charles is no ordinary landlord. He believes that in order for a business to grow, he needs to get involved with his tenants and help them grow their business.
Our success comes from the fact that we really look after our tenants. We make it as easy as possible for them to succeed in their businesses. So we create an environment where they can really reach their full potential.
Now, here in the studio with me is the man himself, Charl de Toit, the CEO of the Success Academy. So, Charl, now you were born in South Africa, but you moved at a very early age to Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, and you grew up there. Just tell us a little bit about what it was like for you growing up there.
My parents got divorced when I was 18 months old, and my dad took me to what was Rhodesia back then, to my aunt, and I grew up on a farm. And really, that was a child's dream to grow up on the farm. I actually did my schooling in Rhodesia, and when I did finished with my matric, my dad just said to me, "Charl, you need to go and get a job." There was nothing about university. In fact, I don't think my family had even found out that there was such a place as a university. Certainly, we didn't have the money to even think about that. So I went for my first interview, and I didn't know what it was for. It turned out that they were looking for an operator. When I got to the interview, it turned out that they were looking for a pest control operator. I was so proud of myself because I actually got the job. And my first interview, imagine that, got the job, very proud. And then 6 months later, I found out that the only reason why I got the job was I was the only applicant. And over the years, I've learned to live with that. But I must tell you also that all my friends used to laugh at me because, being the bug man, it was really, they all laughed at me. But I stayed with the company. It was a company called Fumigation Services. And after 10 years, I was a co-owner of the company. And there were some interesting times being a pest control operator.
It must have been. I mean, you're probably one of the few multi-millionaires we have on this program who've been attacked by bees and bugs and everything else you can think of. Just tell us how difficult it was in those early days.
Well, you know what? I'll never forget, on one occasion, there was a swarm of bees high up in a tree. And one of my assistants, he went up first with a gas bottle. And when he got to the top, he dropped the gas bottle. So the second assistant went up with the gas bottle, and he also dropped it. So I went after him. We were all high up in the tree, and by this time the bees were really angry, and they started stinging us. And so the top operator fell out the tree on top of the next guy, and both of them fell on me. So that was just one of many, many cases where, where I landed up in hospital as a result of being stung by bees. So being a pest control operator is not exactly
glamorous.
It's not a glamorous job, because you got to crawl under the roofs, under floors, into the roofs of buildings, and get into some really dirty. You really get yourself dirty.
Now, these were the heady days when Zimbabwe was coming up to independence. There was a civil war going on, and you, at the time, were in trouble to an extent with the authorities. You probably also one of the few multimillionaires on this program who spent 6 months in prison for being a conscientious objector. Just tell us a bit about how it came about.
That's quite right, Chris. Towards the end of the 70s, in fact, it was in 79, the authorities eventually caught up with me, because we'd been going through the Bush War, and I was a conscientious objector. And I always say that under Ian Smith's government, I was imprisoned for 6 months for refusing to take up arms. And I spent 6 months in the prison in Gweru. The problem is that everybody else in the prison were actually criminals, and we were all treated the same. It was not a very pleasant experience, I must tell you. And while I was in prison, they came with the next set of call-up papers, which was for the day that I was coming out of prison. And the system there worked: first call-up that you refused to go to, you'd go 6 months. The next one would be 12 months. So I literally fled the country in 1979. Fortunately, I was born here. I had a South African passport. I came through the border in January of 1980. The police had been following me for about 2 weeks before that, because there were a few things I needed to sort out, but they were after me. But fortunately for me, on the 1st of January, they took the day off, I think, and I came through the border. I was so scared going through that border, because I was convinced that they were going to arrest me and put me back in prison.
Not only that, at that time, amongst your peers, you must have been shunned and branded for your stance.
Very much so. It was the cowardly thing to do, And in hindsight now, one can see how pointless it all was. And it wasn't the kind of thing that I admitted to people for many, many years. It was, I was ashamed in the family even, that I was a coward. Looking back now, and many of my friends were killed in that war, maimed for life, and even psychologically damaged to this day, where they're not the people that they used to be. So I came to South Africa.
The land of your birth?
Yeah, it was the land of my birth, fortunately. so I don't know where I would have landed up if I hadn't had my South African passport. And I must share this with you, that I left a very good business in Rhodesia, what is now Zimbabwe. Had to start all over again in the early 80s. The first 2 years I found exceptionally difficult. It was a new country to me, new situation. But I started a pest control company, and my dad and my brother-in-law came in as partners. The company is called Pest Control Specialists. And the company did exceptionally well. I was fortunate because, I'd had 10 years in the industry, and I knew how to, what worked and what didn't work. But came to a new country with new sets of laws, and everything was just difficult, I came with what was then $1,000, which was the equivalent of 1,000 rand.
Yeah, sure.
That's literally what I came into the country with. My first month's rent was something like 900 rand. So,
really?
So those early days were very difficult.
And then we came to your epiphany, 1996. You wanted a new building for your business, couldn't find one, so you decided to build your own. Was it as simple as that?
Not quite, Chris. It sounds quite simple now, but I bought a piece of ground, and we had plans drawn up, went out to tender, and I looked at the prices. I thought, no, I can do this cheaper. And I had built the odd house before in my past, so I got together a team of people, and the building was about 700 square meters. And it took me a whole year to build the building.
So you were in there too with your tools?
Well,
Not quite.
well, to a certain extent. I was running a business as well, you know. When I finished building the offices and we moved in, I thought to myself, oh, you know, this could be quite a nice hobby, because I'd got together a group of people, subcontractors who were very good. That's most probably one of my greatest strengths that I have. I have the ability to work with people and to get the best out of them. So I decided, well, you know, this is a good hobby. So I bought the property next door. And that's how it all started, you know. Each year the projects just got bigger and bigger. To date, in the last, I would say, 17 years now, I've built over 100 buildings in Highveld Technopark in Centurion. My portfolio currently is about 55,000 square meters of office space. And we have about 120 corporate tenants. And we're busy, you know, with our latest project of about 40 buildings, which will take about 4 years. I now take a month to finish a building of 700 square meters, whereas my first one took me a year. So I've learned a little bit in the process.
And the pest business, what happened to that?
You know what, Chris, about 10 years ago now, I decided that the hobby had got bigger than the franchise business. Because from 1990, when we franchised the business, and this is a very interesting factor, that, you know, it doesn't matter what business you're involved in. The moment you franchise that business, you are no longer in that business. You're now in the franchise business. And it's a totally new business. You've got to learn, you know, franchising sounds very simple. You find a winning recipe, and then you simplify it, and then you duplicate it. And that's what franchising is. And it's quite interesting that, I mean, I sold my franchise business to a couple of my franchisees that had been with me for a long time. They paid me off over a 5-year period. I must tell you, I was very impressed, because they actually paid me off.
Oh.
You know, at first I thought, I wonder if they're going to last 5 years. But they've actually taken the business to new heights, and they're still doing very well.
Well, hold that thought there, Charl. We're going to talk a lot more in the second half about the property game, but also your particular love for trees, which I know is something that you want to talk about a lot. It's time for a short ad break. We'll see you right after this.